Ruth, this survey deals mainly with how things turned out in 2012 and it takes a look at how your members feel about the future. But first, what were the highlights from last year?
Well, the highlights from last year, Eamon, and I suppose one of the most significant highlights is that we saw growth yet again for the second consecutive year and a very strong return to recovery. But I suppose the highlights were our visitor numbers were up 17%, our members' turnover was up 19%. And I suppose when you take that on board and the spend of our members, visitors in Ireland was up to 346 million, which is a significant figure for the Irish tourism economy in Ireland
substantial.
In terms of what our visitors actually have the capacity to spend while here as well. So they're just some of the really good and positive highlights.
And tell us, how does that business break down as between group coach tours and individual visitors?
Interesting you should ask that. As has been the norm and the trend for ITOA members, the majority of our members' business is group business, and that continued to be the case in 2012 with 50% of the business being groups. Interestingly enough, however, it has to be said that the individual market, the FIT packaged business, is growing year on year. So that now represents a quarter of our members' business as well. But I suppose if you look at the group business overall, and given that business, tourism, and we would have what we now call a special events segment, which was fairly significant now in 2012, given the US football game and the Eucharistic Congress, etc. But much of that would have been group business as well. So you could actually probably say that certainly 75% was group business.
And coming from principally which markets?
Principally North America, mainland Europe, and then obviously we do some business out of Britain, predominantly small bit of leisure, but mostly business tourism out of that market, but really North America and mainland Europe. Okay,
and so despite the global trend towards the use of internet for travel bookings, the travel trade are still big producers for your members. Are there differences between markets in this regard, and how are your members responding to this shift in web-based bookings?
Sure. Yeah, well, in terms of web-based booking, Eamon, you know, a lot of our trade partners in the markets and indeed our members have got to be in that space as well. So obviously it's a shop window that everybody needs to be in now, and there's been significant investment by our members and their partners in the market in terms of the technology that's required to be in that online space. It does vary significantly, obviously, from market to market. We all know that GB is very consumer direct booking business, whereas I suppose for our members, and they being intermediaries for the United States and for a lot of mainland Europe, France and Germany being the primary markets there, still there's a need for the packaged product to be available either direct through the travel trade, but as I say, who are also there in that online window as well.
Sure, and they remain very important for Ireland, of course. Yeah. And like all good surveys, of course, you look at some threats and opportunities. Tell us a little bit about what your members are saying or thinking in this space. Hopefully it's more about opportunities.
Indeed. Well, opportunities certainly that our members identified, I suppose, going into this year and obviously in 2012, which is when this survey was about that business. But the gathering obviously was one of the top things that our members identified. Sure. And I suppose one would have to say that the gathering presented a unique and wonderful opportunity, not just for 2013, but indeed into 2014 and beyond, because really what the gathering has done has put Ireland back on a much firmer positive footing in terms of the overseas markets and people's view of it as a holiday destination after much negative, I suppose, press in the late 2009, 2010, etc. Obviously increased access, we see that as being hugely positive, and particularly from North America, as we've seen this year, the growth of 25% in terms of capacity. That's fantastic news. An island nation, we need as much of that air capacity as well as from mainland Europe, not just the long haul market. So I suppose there are some of the key opportunities. Threats, I suppose, just in terms of our competitiveness internationally. You know, we've had a few good years now in Irish tourism. We need to be mindful of the fact that a lot of that has been driven by us actually getting some good competitive product out there, and we need to make sure that we jealously guard that and continue. We still have a ways to go just in terms of competitiveness, and obviously retention of the reduced VAT rate will go a long way to helping that as well.
Very important indeed.
It is indeed, yeah.
And finally, Ruth, St. Patrick's Day behind us, so what are the members of the ITOA saying about the current year? Positive?
Very positive overall. I know you interviewed Nico Zenner, one of our members there recently, and as you know, Nico had a very positive story to tell, but ITOA have just finished our week of workshops around the country and here in Dublin as well. And I suppose the good news is that there was a very strong air of positivity in both of the workshop rooms, both in Limerick, which covers all of the West Coast and all of our partners in the industry there, as well as Dublin. So our members are certainly very optimistic and very positive going forward for this year. Still lots of business out there to be won, but certainly all signs on that it's very positive in terms of forward bookings where we are right now. But it's really encouraging to see that the industry are sharing that view as well. So, as I say, it's nice to get a start to the season and indeed the contracting for 2014 in a very positive frame of mind.
Great, and that's an interesting note to finish this on, because while we are still talking about what the season will be like, there you are, your members out already contracting for next year, so time flies.
Absolutely, they're contracting for next year and the years beyond, believe it or believe it not, Eamon, so
Indeed.
Lots more to be done.
Great, thank you, Ruth.
Thanks, Eamon.